It was Christmas Eve. Snow was falling gently outside my in-laws' house, and I was holding a small velvet box in my pocket ready to surprise my wife Stephanie with a diamond necklace I had saved 3 months to buy. I thought this would be our most beautiful Christmas together. But in less than 5 minutes, my wife would drag me in front of her entire family, slap me across the face, and accuse me of giving her a sexually transmitted disease. I was completely innocent. So where did it really come from? Before I tell you how my life turned upside down in a single night, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you believe in truth and justice, hit that like button and subscribe. Now let me take you back to that nightmare Christmas Eve. I met Stephanie 5 years ago at a local concert in our small Ohio town. She was standing near the front, swaying to the music with her eyes closed, completely lost in the moment. I remember thinking she was the most carefree person I had ever seen. I gathered my courage, walked up to her during the intermission, and asked if I could buy her a drink. She smiled and said yes. That simple yes changed the entire direction of my life. Stephanie worked in marketing at a large insurance company downtown. She was smart, ambitious, and had this infectious energy that made everyone around her feel alive. I was a mechanical engineer at an automobile manufacturing plant about 20 miles outside the city. Our schedules were different. Our worlds were different, but somehow we fit together perfectly. Or at least that is what I believed. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. Nothing fancy, just a quiet evening on the rooftop of our apartment building, surrounded by candles I had spent all afternoon setting up. She cried and said yes before I even finished asking the question. Our wedding was small and intimate, just close family and a handful of friends. We did not need anything extravagant. We had each other, and that felt like more than enough. For 3 years of marriage, I genuinely thought we were happy. We had our routines that I loved. Cooking dinner together on weeknights, watching movies every Friday evening, curled up on the couch, talking about our dreams of buying a house with a backyard someday. I would come home from work exhausted, covered in grease and sweat, and she would greet me with a kiss and ask about my day. It felt like we were building something real, something that would last forever. Looking back now, I can see the cracks that I was too blind to notice at the time. About 6 months before that Christmas, Stephanie started working late more often. At first it was once or twice a week. Then it became almost every night. She said there was a big project at work, something about restructuring the entire marketing department, and she needed to put in extra hours to prove herself. I believed her without question. Why would I not? She was my wife. I trusted her completely. Around that same time, she started mentioning a new coworker named Trevor. He had transferred from the Chicago office and was assigned to work directly with her on the project. She talked about how helpful he was, how he understood the pressure she was under, how he always brought her coffee when she was stressed. I thought it was nice that she had someone supportive at work. I even felt a little grateful to this Trevor guy for looking out for my wife when I could not be there. Then came the smaller changes that I noticed, but chose to ignore. Stephanie joined a gym and started going almost every day. She bought new clothes, updated her hairstyle, started wearing perfume she had never worn before. When I complimented her, she seemed almost dismissive, like my opinion did not matter as much as it used to. Her phone became a fortress. She changed the password and always kept it face down on the table. Once I walked into the room and caught her smiling at her screen with a look I had not seen in months. When I asked who she was texting, she said it was just the work group chat, and quickly put the phone away. I told myself I was being paranoid. Stephanie loved me. We were happy. These changes were just her growing more confident, finding herself outside of our marriage. I should be supportive, not suspicious. So I pushed down the tiny voice in the back of my head that whispered something was wrong, and I focused on being a good husband. As Christmas approached, I wanted to do something special. I had been saving money for months, skipping lunches at work and cutting back on everything I could to buy Stephanie a small diamond necklace she had admired in a store window last summer. It was not extravagant, but it was meaningful. I also had big news to share. I had just been promoted to senior engineer with a significant raise. This meant we could finally start seriously looking for that house we had always dreamed about. I imagined the look on her face when I gave her the necklace and told her about the promotion. I imagined her jumping into my arms, crying happy tears, telling me how proud she was. I imagined us driving home that night, planning our future, more in love than ever. Christmas Eve arrived and we drove to her parents' house for dinner just like every year. The snow was falling lightly, coating everything in white, making the world look pure and magical. I remember holding Stephanie's hand as I drove, feeling content and hopeful. She seemed distracted, checking her phone repeatedly, but I assumed she was just coordinating with her family about dinner. Her parents' house was decorated beautifully, lights wrapped around the porch railings, a wreath on the front door. The smell of roasting turkey drifting out to greet us as we walked up the path. Her father Harold opened the door with a big smile and a firm handshake. Her mother Patricia hugged me and told me I looked handsome. Her younger sister Madison was there with her husband Kyle, and everyone seemed genuinely happy to see us. I had no idea that in less than an hour, these same people would be throwing me out into the cold. Dinner was wonderful, at least on the surface. Patricia had outdone herself with the turkey, the mashed potatoes, the homemade gravy. Harold told stories about his days working at the steel mill, making everyone laugh with his exaggerated impressions of his old co-workers. Madison talked about her new job at the elementary school, and Kyle showed pictures of the bathroom renovation he had just finished. It felt like family. It felt like belonging. But throughout the meal, I noticed Stephanie was unusually quiet. She picked at her food, barely eating, and kept glancing at her phone under the table. When I asked if she was okay, she gave me a tight smile and said she was just tired from work. I accepted the explanation, even though something in her eyes told me there was more she was not saying. After dinner, we all moved to the living room to exchange gifts. The tree was magnificent, covered in ornaments that Patricia had collected over 30 years. Presents were piled underneath, wrapped in red and gold paper. I felt the velvet box in my pocket, and my heart raced with anticipation. This was the moment I had been waiting for. But before I could reach for the necklace, Stephanie grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight, almost painful. "We need to talk," she said. "Privately. Now." The sharpness in her voice caught me off guard. I followed her to a small sitting room off the main hallway, my mind racing through possibilities. Had I forgotten something? Done something wrong? Maybe she wanted to exchange gifts privately first. I had no idea what was coming. She closed the door behind us and turned to face me. Her expression was something I had never seen before. Cold, hard, furious. "What is going on?" I asked, genuinely confused. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Her hands were shaking as she thrust it toward me. "Explain this," she hissed. I took the paper and unfolded it. It was a medical test result from a clinic I did not recognize. The diagnosis jumped out at me immediately. Chlamydia. Positive. "I do not understand," I stammered. "This is your test result. What does this have to do with me?" Her face contorted with rage. "Are you seriously going to stand there and play dumb? I have never been with anyone but you. If I have this, it is because you gave it to me. You cheating piece of garbage." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. I could not process what she was saying. Cheating me. I had never so much as looked at another woman since the day I met Stephanie. The idea was absurd, impossible, completely disconnected from reality. "Stephanie, I swear to you I have never cheated," I said, my voice cracking. "There has to be some mistake. Maybe the test is wrong. Maybe—" She did not let me finish. She yanked open the door and stormed back into the living room where her entire family was waiting. I followed, my heart pounding, my mind still trying to catch up with what was happening. "Everyone needs to hear this," Stephanie announced, her voice loud and trembling. "My husband has been cheating on me. He gave me an STD on Christmas." The room went silent. Every pair of eyes turned to me with a mixture of shock and disgust. I opened my mouth to defend myself, to explain that this was all a terrible misunderstanding, but before I could get a word out, Stephanie's hand connected with my face. The slap echoed through the room. My cheek exploded with pain and I stumbled backward, nearly losing my balance. I had never been hit by anyone in my adult life, let alone by the woman I loved. You are disgusting, Stephanie spat. I gave you everything, everything, and this is how you repay me. Harold rose from his chair, his face red with fury. Get out of my house, he growled. Get out right now. Please just let me explain, I begged. I did not do anything wrong. I have never cheated on Stephanie. Never. Liar, Madison shouted. How can you stand there and lie when my sister has proof? Kyle stepped forward and grabbed my shoulder, his grip painful. You heard the man. Time to leave. Patricia was crying, holding Stephanie in her arms, looking at me like I was the lowest form of life on the planet. I searched their faces desperately, looking for even one person who might give me the benefit of the doubt, but there was no one. Kyle pushed me toward the front door, and I did not resist. What could I do? Fight my way back and force them to listen? They had already made up their minds. In their eyes, I was guilty, and nothing I said would change that. The door slammed behind me, and I found myself standing on the porch in the freezing December night. I was wearing only a thin sweater because my coat was still inside. My car keys were in Stephanie's purse. I had nothing. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, the snow falling around me, my cheek throbbing, my entire world shattered into pieces. Just an hour ago, I was the happiest man alive. Now I was standing in the cold, accused of something I did not do, cast out by the people I thought were my family. The days that followed were the darkest of my life. I called an Uber from the porch and rode home in silence, staring out the window at the Christmas lights that decorated every house we passed. They seemed to mock me, all that joy and warmth, while I was drowning in despair. Stephanie did not come home that night, or the next night. She stayed with her parents, and she made sure everyone knew why. I started receiving text messages from her friends calling me every name imaginable. One of my own coworkers texted to ask if the rumors were true. Apparently, Stephanie had posted something vague on Facebook about betrayal and broken trust, and the comments were flooded with support for her and condemnation for the anonymous villain who had wronged her. Me. Even my own mother called, confused and worried, asking what was happening. I did not know how to explain it. How do you tell your mother that your wife has accused you of infidelity when you know in your heart that you are innocent? I just told her it was a misunderstanding and that I would sort it out. But I had no idea how. I spent those days alone in our apartment, surrounded by all the reminders of our life together. Our wedding photos on the wall, the blanket we always shared on movie nights, the coffee mug she had given me for my birthday that said, "World's Best Husband." Every item felt like a cruel joke now. I barely slept. I barely ate. I just sat there replaying that night over and over in my mind, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong so fast. And underneath all the pain and confusion, one question kept nagging at me, demanding an answer. If I had never cheated, and Stephanie had this infection, then where did it come from? 3 days after Christmas, I finally pulled myself together enough to take action. If I was going to clear my name, I needed proof. And the first step was getting tested myself. I drove to a clinic on the other side of town where nobody would recognize me. The waiting room was nearly empty, just a couple of teenagers in the corner avoiding eye contact with everyone. I filled out the paperwork with shaking hands and submitted to every test they offered. Blood draws, swabs, the whole humiliating process. The nurse said results would take about 48 hours. Those 2 days were torture. I could not focus on anything. I called in sick to work, something I had never done before. I just sat by my phone waiting, wondering if somehow I had contracted something without knowing it. Maybe there was some explanation I had not considered. Maybe I was wrong about my own innocence. When the clinic finally called, my heart nearly stopped. I drove there immediately, my palms sweaty on the steering wheel. The nurse handed me an envelope with a sympathetic smile, and I tore it open right there in the lobby. Negative. Every single test. Completely clean. I stared at the results, reading them over and over to make sure I understood correctly. I did not have chlamydia. I did not have anything. If Stephanie had contracted the infection, it was not from me, which meant only one thing. She had gotten it from someone else. The realization hit me like a truck. All those late nights at work, The new clothes, the gym membership, the secretive phone behavior. The way she talked about Trevor, her helpful coworker who was always there for her. Suddenly, all those puzzle pieces that I had refused to see clearly came together into a picture I could no longer ignore. My wife was having an affair, and she had the audacity to accuse me of cheating to cover her own guilt. The betrayal was almost too much to bear. Not just the infidelity itself, but the calculated cruelty of what she had done. She knew she was infected. She knew she had gotten it from someone else. And instead of confessing, instead of taking responsibility, she had chosen to destroy my reputation, turn her entire family against me, and paint me as the villain in a story where she was the one who had broken our vows. I sat in my car in this clinic parking lot for a long time just processing. The initial shock gave way to anger, and the anger eventually settled into something colder, more focused. I was not going to let her get away with this. I was going to find the truth, and I was going to make sure everyone knew it. When I got home, I started thinking strategically. I needed evidence, real, undeniable proof that would vindicate me completely. And then I remembered something that made my pulse quicken. Stephanie's old laptop was still in the closet of our bedroom. She had stopped using it when she got a new one from work, but I knew it was still synced to her iCloud account. If she had been communicating with Trevor, there might be messages on that laptop that she had forgotten to delete. I found the laptop buried under a pile of old sweaters. I plugged it in and waited for it to power up, my hands trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Part of me did not want to find anything. Part of me still hoped there was some other explanation, some way this could all be a terrible mistake. But when I opened her iMessage application, the hope evaporated instantly. There were hundreds of messages between Stephanie and Trevor dating back at least 6 months. I scrolled through them with growing horror, watching my marriage disintegrate before my eyes in text form. The early messages were flirtatious, but could have been dismissed as friendly banter. Compliments on how she looked, jokes about their coworkers, nothing overtly incriminating. But as I scrolled forward in time, the tone shifted dramatically. "I cannot stop thinking about last night," Trevor had written in September. "You are incredible." "I know," Stephanie replied. "But we have to be more careful. Benson almost saw your text yesterday." There were photos. Pictures Stephanie had sent of herself in lingerie I had never seen, poses she had never struck for me. There were messages planning their meetings, coordinating around my work schedule. "Benson is working late tomorrow," she wrote in one message from October. "Come over at 8, park down the street." "I will bring the wine," Trevor responded. "Cannot wait to have you all to myself." I felt physically sick as I read. 6 months. For 6 months my wife had been sleeping with another man in our home, in our bed, while I worked overtime to save money for her Christmas present. The level of deception was staggering. And then I found it. The message that changed everything. It was from just 2 weeks before Christmas. Trevor had written, "Hey, I need to tell you something. I just got my test results back. I have chlamydia. I am so sorry. You should probably get checked." Stephanie's response was panicked. "Oh my God. Oh my God. What am I going to do? Benson will find out. This will ruin everything." Trevor's reply, "Just get treated quietly. He does not have to know." But apparently Stephanie had decided on a different strategy. Instead of hiding it, she had chosen to weaponize it. Frame me for her own crime. Make herself the victim and me the monster. I took screenshots of everything. Every message, every photo, every piece of evidence. I saved them to a USB drive and also emailed them to myself as a backup. Then I sat back and considered my next move. My first instinct was to confront Stephanie directly, throw the evidence in her face and watch her squirm. But that would only give her time to spin another story to manipulate her family before I could set the record straight. No, I needed to do this right. I needed everyone to see the truth at the same time. I called Harold, my father-in-law. He answered on the third ring, his voice cold and hostile. "What do you want?" he demanded. "I need to meet with you and the family," I said, keeping my voice steady. "To discuss the situation. I have some information that changes everything. We do not want to hear your excuses." It is not an excuse. It is proof. Proof that Stephanie has been lying to all of you. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing heavily, probably trying to decide whether to hang up on me. Please, I added. Just give me 15 minutes. If I am wrong, you can throw me out again. But I think you deserve to know the truth. Another long pause. Then reluctantly, fine. Saturday afternoon. But this better not be a waste of my time. I spent the next few days preparing. I printed out the messages, organized them chronologically, highlighted the key passages. I made copies of my negative test results. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would present the evidence, how I would respond to the inevitable denials and excuses. By Saturday, I was ready. I arrived at Harold and Patricia's house at exactly 2 in the afternoon. The weather had warmed slightly, melting most of the Christmas snow into gray slush that lined the sidewalks. I walked up to the front door carrying a folder full of documents, my heart pounding but my mind clear. Harold opened the door and stepped aside without greeting me. The living room was arranged almost exactly as it had been on Christmas Eve, but now the tree was bare and the festive decorations had been taken down. The family was assembled like a tribunal. Patricia sat on the couch, her face drawn and tired. Madison and Kyle occupied the love seat, both glaring at me with undisguised contempt. And Stephanie sat in an armchair near the window, her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of nervousness and defiance. You wanted to talk, Harold said gruffly. So talk. I did not sit down. I stood in the center of the room where everyone could see me clearly. First, I said, I want you all to see this. I pulled out my test results and handed them to Harold. He looked at them frowning, then passed them to Patricia. These are my results from 3 days after Christmas. As you can see, I tested negative for everything. I do not have chlamydia. I have never had chlamydia. Tests can be wrong, Madison said quickly. Maybe you got treated before you got tested. I never received any treatment because I was never infected. The timeline does not work. If I had given Stephanie this infection, I would have tested positive too. That is how it works. Stephanie shifted in her chair but said nothing. But here is the more important evidence. I continued pulling the stack of printed messages from my folder. This is a record of text messages between Stephanie and a man named Trevor, her coworker. They have been having an affair for at least 6 months. The room went very still. Stephanie's face drained of color. That is a lie, she said, her voice high and strained. You faked those. You are trying to turn this around on me. I ignored her and began reading aloud. September 14th, Trevor writes, I cannot stop thinking about last night. You are incredible. Stephanie replies, I know, but we have to be more careful. Benson almost saw your text yesterday. I looked up. Patricia had her hand over her mouth. Harold's face was turning red again, but this time I could not tell if it was anger at me or at what he was hearing. I continued reading. The October messages about Trevor coming to our apartment while I worked late. The suggestive photos. The constant deception laid bare in their own words. And then finally the message from 2 weeks before Christmas. Trevor informing Stephanie that he had tested positive. Stephanie panicking about how to hide it. Trevor suggesting she get treated quietly. That is where the infection came from, I said. Not from me, from Trevor. And instead of admitting what she had done, Stephanie decided to accuse me, to humiliate me in front of all of you, to destroy my reputation rather than take responsibility for her own actions. Madison took the printed messages from my hand and began reading them herself. Her expression changed from skepticism to shock, to something that looked like shame. She passed them to Kyle, who read them silently, his jaw tightening. Stephanie, Patricia said quietly, is this true? Stephanie stood up abruptly, her composure cracking. You do not understand, she said, tears streaming down her face. It just happened. Trevor and we worked together every day, and Benson was never around and I was lonely and… So it is true. Harold interrupted, his voice heavy with disappointment. You cheated on your husband, and then you lied about it. made us all believe he was the guilty one. Stephanie turned to me, her expression desperate. Benson, please, I am so sorry. I panicked. I did not know what to do. I love you. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. Please do not throw away everything we have. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I had loved with everything I had. This woman I had trusted completely. This woman who had chosen to betray me in the most intimate way possible, and then compound that betrayal by making me the villain of her story. Everything we had, I said slowly, was a lie. At least the last 6 months of it were. And I cannot build a future on lies. I turned to Harold and Patricia. I came here today because I needed you to know the truth, not for revenge, not to humiliate Stephanie, but because I could not let you go on believing that I was the kind of man who would do what she accused me of. I have my faults, but unfaithfulness is not one of them. Patricia stood and walked over to me. There were tears in her eyes. I am so sorry, she said. We should have listened to you. We should have given you a chance to explain before we… You believed your daughter, I said. I understand. That is what family does. Madison approached me next, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. I called you horrible things, she said. I am ashamed of how I acted. I am so sorry, Benson. I nodded at her. I was not ready to say it was okay because it was not. But I accepted that she had been deceived just like everyone else. Stephanie tried one more time to reach me, grabbing my arm as I headed for the door. Please, she whispered. Give me another chance. I will do anything. I gently removed her hand. The time for chances was before you decided to cheat, and definitely before you decided to blame me for it. I walked out of that house for the last time. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Because I had documented proof of Stephanie's infidelity, the proceedings were relatively straightforward. We had not accumulated much during our marriage, just some savings and furniture, and I did not fight for any of it. I just wanted to be free. I moved to a new city, a fresh start where nobody knew my name or my story. The first few months were brutal. I woke up every night from dreams where Stephanie was screaming at me, where her family was pushing me out into the cold, where I was trying to speak, but no sound came out. I went to therapy, something I had never done before, and slowly began to untangle the damage that betrayal had done to my sense of self. I started running in the mornings, feeling my body grow stronger as my mind began to heal. I made new friends at work, people who knew nothing about my past and accepted me for who I was. I learned to cook meals I actually enjoyed, to fill my apartment with things that made me happy, to build a life that was entirely my own. 1 year later, I barely recognized the broken man who had stood shivering on that porch on Christmas Eve. I was stronger, more confident, more at peace with myself than I had ever been, even during the supposedly happy years of my marriage. The experience taught me lessons I carry with me every day. Trust is precious, and it should be given to people who earn it, not just to people who ask for it. The truth always comes out eventually, no matter how carefully someone tries to bury it. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the doorway to the best chapter of your life. I do not hate Stephanie anymore. Hatred takes energy that I would rather spend on myself and the people who genuinely care about me. I hope she finds whatever she was looking for when she decided to throw away our marriage. But that is her journey, not mine. Sometimes the person you would take a bullet for is the one holding the gun. But that does not mean you have to stay in the line of fire. Know your worth, protect your peace, and never be afraid to walk away from anyone who does not deserve you. Have you ever been accused of something you did not do? How did you prove your innocence? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Do not forget to subscribe so you never miss another story. Thank you for watching, for believing in truth and justice, and for being part of this community. Take care of yourself, protect your heart, and remember that you deserve a love that is honest and true.